I am ready to start.
Ready when you are. Go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to call to order the South Lyon Community Schools Board of Education special meeting, April 29th, 2020. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Okay, I am here. Ms. Henshaw.
Here.
Mr. Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Dashner.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Swegler.
Here.
And Ms. Vitale.
Here.
That's all of us here. That's 7. We have a quorum. And with that, we will move on to our first item of agenda is the public comment. I don't currently have any at this time. So with that, we will move on to our interview. I want to make sure that Mr. Hartley has joined us. And I am missing my questions here.
There he is.
Is he there?
Oh, Dr. Hartley, your mic is on mute.
Got it. Good evening. Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you.
How is everyone?
Good.
Good. How are you?
Great.
Doing well, thank you.
Did Carrie lock up?
Yeah, Carrie's frozen again. So we're fighting some technical issues tonight.
Yeah, we definitely. Am I back on?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Just so you know, Karen, you're very, very grainy. So I don't know if there's a quality issue on your computer or if you've got Wi-Fi, low volume or whatever it's called.
Right. Well, no, I actually just put it on high def. So
Okay.
you can hear me now. Okay. Good evening. On behalf of the Board of Education of South Lyon Community Schools, I would like to welcome Adam Hartley to this interview for the position of superintendent. Dr. Hartley is currently superintendent of Fenton Area Public Schools in Fenton. I will take just a moment to describe 90 minutes. The interview may take up to, there will be one questions from the board. Toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give the candidate an opportunity to make a closing statement of the board, and we will let you know if time is becoming an issue and you need to pick up your responses. We also, audience feedback may be submitted electronically. Although the task of choosing the next superintendent is the responsibility of the board, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in the process. And before we begin with our questions, I'd like the board to introduce themselves. I'll begin. My name is Carrie Hanshaw, board president.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Eric Kennedy, the vice president.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Hello there. I'm Anthony Abate. I'm the board secretary. It's nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you.
Good evening. I'm Craig Dashner. I am the treasurer of the board.
Nice meeting you.
And good evening, Randy Clark, board trustee.
Good evening. Nice meeting you.
I am Jenny Ertel, board trustee. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
And hi, I'm Dan Schwegler, board trustee.
Nice to meet you. Good evening.
Okay, with that, we will begin. Oh, also, just so you know, the board members are taking notes either on computers or paper. So if we're looking away from the camera, that's what we're doing. Okay.
No problem. We live on Google Meet and Zoom lately, so that's totally understand.
Standard process. Okay. Well, we have had the opportunity to review your application materials. Those watching.
Yikes. Slacked up
Yeah.
again.
If you want,
Yeah, Eric, do you want to go ahead and read it for her?
I can finish that question. We'll start all over again. While we've had the opportunity to review your application materials, those watching us at home have not. If you can please briefly describe your background and share what causes you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. First and foremost, I just want to introduce my family just verbally. If this were face-to-face, I'm very fortunate to have met my wife, Nicole, about 20 8 years ago. We're celebrating our 27th wedding anniversary in October. She's always going, my biggest cheerleader, and she would have been at the interview along with our children. Taylor's 26, Adam's 23, and Cameron's 20. And when I went through this process 4 years ago, they came to the interviews and always have been very supportive. So I just want to introduce them. The boys went over to their sister's house, and we made them take our golden retriever because we knew Gus wouldn't cooperate with the virtual interviews. So I am very fortunate to be part of the Fenton community. I'm completing my 4th year as superintendent for the Fenton area public schools. 4 years of building amazing relationships, working with phenomenal people within the school community and as the community as a whole. They certainly have helped me grow as a leader, as a person. I would hope that they would say the same as me, helping them grow as people and as leaders. And there's very few opportunities in the state of Michigan that I would consider leaving a school district and a community such as Fenton. And Nicole and I talked a lot when South Lyon was posted, a lot of conversations, ultimately applied, had more conversations after I applied. And South Lyon really fits kind of this personal checklist and professional checklist. On the professional side, South Lyon Community Schools has always been well known. It's a phenomenal school district, a growing school district, a vibrant school district. For me professionally, it would provide a challenge to lead a larger school community, to impact more people, to help more people grow, and then selfishly to help myself grow as well. So from a professional standpoint, it really meets that criteria. And from a personal standpoint, Nicole and I are going into kind of that next chapter in life, empty nesters, so to speak. And, again, as I pointed out, very few opportunities would take us away from Fenton, and South Lyon fits that personal standpoint. Our daughter lives in Oakland County. Our 2 sons are kind of migrating southern Genesee County to Oakland County, and any move that I make in my career has to align with Nicole. Nicole's a teacher in Genesee County and has to align with our personal goals as well. So South Lyon fits both the professional and personal, criteria, so to speak, and very excited to be here tonight and appreciate the invite. And then just quickly, for those individuals that have not been able to look at my resume, started as a teacher in Flint, went to Montrose, which is a rural district in Genesee County. Just phenomenal years teaching and coaching, absolutely loved coaching. Did a quick stint in Richmond, Michigan as an assistant principal, and then came back to Genesee County as a elementary principal in Flushing, and probably some of the best years of my career. I was my 3 kids principal at Central Elementary and spending time there. Then I went to Birmingham Public Schools, principal of Birmingham Covington for 3 years. Really just looking to spread my wings at that point, needed some more experience, and was very fortunate to spend 3 years in Birmingham Public Schools and working with other Oakland County districts and Oakland schools. Came back to Genesee County as the assistant superintendent in Swartz Creek for curriculum and instruction. Was very fortunate to work with a small group of amazing people in Flint, Michigan to start Gear Up to Lead. I am the founding executive director. And then Fenton Area Public Schools, my dream job came up and was named superintendent. And again, I'm completing my 4th year in Fenton.
Thank you. I see we don't see
Okay.
Carrie yet. Do you want the next
Can
one?
you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to save my Wi-Fi, so I'll turn the screen off. Okay. Given what you know about South Lyon Community Schools, please tell us what you believe are the most immediate challenges we face, as well as the most critical long-term challenge we will need to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing you probably heard this the last couple of nights, and continue to hear it as a school board, and I'll continue to say it. And it's something, it's a challenge that has for the, really since 1994, but really the past decade or so, especially for base foundation districts such as South Lyon Community Schools, is the finance area, the budget. It is something that we have to be laser focused, continue to be laser focused, get creative, be innovative, and keep an open mind. So that challenge has always been there in recent years. I've come to the realization as I go through my career and throughout my career, it will be a challenge in the state of Michigan and probably throughout our country. So the budget side of that, absolutely an immediate challenge. And with COVID-19 and the shutdown and where we have seen the economy and where we know that's going to go, just magnifies that immediate challenge. Another, knowing, researching South Lyon and through perusing the website and looking at news articles and meeting with people that I'm familiar, either work with within South Lyon or live within South Lyon. Challenge for me right off the bat as superintendent would to pick up the ball and run with it is the bond that's on the ballot August 4th. I know that was set for, I think it's May 5th, moved to August 4th. That is something that I would have to take on that challenge day one to make sure as the community sees the transition to a new school leader and a leader within the community, nothing has changed. That the hard work you've done as a school board, the hard work that the previous superintendent has done, that George or Dr. Heisch is now doing with you in the community, that's a huge challenge for the next superintendent, not to drop that ball. And that means getting out in front of it. People need to see me as a trustworthy, transparent, approachable superintendent, because you only have a couple months to work with before that bond is voted on. And that goes back to the budget and back to financing. That's huge. I think it's $94 million. And looking at what that would be targeting, absolutely huge for the budget challenge. Another immediate challenge really comes from the COVID shutdown, and that's regaining a sense of normalcy. What all of us are going through in education because of what's happening with the pandemic and essentially face-to-face instruction shut down overnight. First and foremost, our students, when coming back into the fall, whatever that looks like, meeting their needs, but even extending that out to the adults. I'll tell you, as superintendent, I was not prepared. There's no college class, there's no conference that I can attend to prepare me for what happened. And you as school board members, working closely with my school board the last couple months. I mean, we talk about trauma-informed care for students. That that is a challenge that we have to attack head on to create this sense of normalcy when our families and our students and our staff are coming back. And then finally, I think you had mentioned those long-term challenges. Aside from budget, really the social emotional needs, and that's getting back to the sense of normalcy and really looking at how do we help our families provide high expectations and a vibrant curriculum and have those expectations. They don't come down when it comes to teaching and learning, but we have to have those wraparound services and understand that we're just in a different place. And then finally, a challenge that I have seen as a teacher and administrator, now as a superintendent, is mindset. And one thing that excited me about this posting, reading through it, is you actually as a board collectively, and whoever is responsible for this or a group of you to put growth mindset on the posting, kudos to you. That is something that is near and dear to my heart. And Dweck's research on growth versus fixed, and it's something that I carry with me each day in both my professional and personal life. And the challenge of going through adversity and looking at the budget and looking at getting back to the sense of normalcy we have to do that through a growth mindset, and we have to do that in a very positive, with a positive attitude.
All right, thank you. Okay, speaking of that, what was your role in your district's COVID-19 response? And with what you know today, what would you do differently?
Sure. I think first and foremost, my role was and continues to be a calm and caring leader. A few things kind of went out the door with the executive order. And then as we're now a couple weeks into our continuous learning plan, and then ultimately, before that became more of a focal point, just staying connected and engaging our students and reaching out to our families. I needed to model that. I needed to model the calmness through the storm. I needed it to model that, the expectation of teaching and learning, and the expectation that we're preparing our students for college and career readiness, and all of that is as important, if not more important, going into next year. But we had to take a step back, take a deep breath, and understand what was going on around us. So my first and foremost role was to be that calm and caring leader, and then bring people together. What we did right away, I worked with our administrative staff, and we created a COVID call center, and we just needed to remove all the emails and the numbers and focus it to one contact. We had staff volunteer to come in. We had community members and parents come in and volunteer, and we are still utilizing that COVID call center to this day in numerous of calls. And it's anything from Chromebook handout to not being able to log on to Google Meet, all the way to, hey, where can I find food over the weekend? And that was something that I right away asked, get the administrative team to, again, bring people together. We're all fighting through this. And another role is the bridge between local, state, and federal guidelines and the executive orders. And if you read through the executive orders, and then ultimately read through what our legal representation sends us the next day, we would not expect any parent or student or even staff, for that matter, to read through that and truly understand what that means for their day-to-day life. So my role continues to be to really take that and communicate it to all stakeholders that makes sense. And then finally, my role was to really, it's a way I lead anyways. It comes natural, and it's something that we practice in Fenton Public Schools, but that's distributive leadership. And my role was to take a step back, understand that we have phenomenal people in Fenton Public Schools, that this is not a top-down plan. This is not a top-down, it's not a time to make decisions without getting people involved. And I'm very proud of our Fenton teachers. I'm very proud of our support staff and the administrative team. The exec team and I met numerous times, and ultimately that distributive leadership that started with me as superintendent and then into the exec team, the building principals, we're going to be stronger coming out of this because everybody had a voice and everybody had a say, and people are a little calmer because they know that they're a part of this contingency plan. And no one knows the students better than the teachers. No one knows the teachers better than the building principals. And it was my role to make sure everybody was involved.
Thank you.
And sorry, because I wrote this down, anything I would change. I use the analogy that we're building a plane in the air, and we're still building that plane. At least we know now what the destination is, a contingency learning plan, and we're preparing for summer school and the fall will look like. I would answer that with, ask me again in 2 months, and I'll have a long list of probably things that we certainly could do better and prepare ourselves for this. And We're still building that plane in the air, and I think it's too early to tell really what we would do differently. But I have no doubt there will be a long list as we prepare for another shutdown.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Sertel?
Okay, yes, thank you. I'm going to have the next 3 questions, and they are on district relations. So maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to the Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with a diverse group of district stakeholders.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. First and foremost, I think and this is a mindset, I've worked in a small handful of districts with different positions, obviously working closely with the board as an assistant superintendent, now as superintendent. And every district's different. Every board and superintendent obviously is different. First and foremost, the important, really kind of non-negotiable that myself as superintendent, and then as we work together as a team, would be that anybody that lives within the South Lyon Community School District, anybody that owns a business within the school community and the greater community, our families that choose to send their students, their children to South Lyon as school of choice, they are all stakeholders. So it's important to define what is a stakeholder, and knowing that if they are directly or indirectly a part of our community, they are stakeholders. And that's important to understand as a superintendent, to understand as a school board and a superintendent team. And then ultimately we set that stage for our administrative group that may be working closely with the business or with the PTOs, that we all understand that everybody is valuable to make South Lyon Community Schools a true community school. With that, I am approachable. I have very much enjoyed my time in Fenton, getting to know not only those directly connected with the school district, but those families, those senior citizens, the churches, the businesses, the organizations that may not have children attending Fenton Area Public Schools or grandchildren, getting to know them and making sure that they know that we see them as true partners, and that they have ownership in what we do and the decisions we make within the school district, and that we truly value them. So being approachable is key. Again, a challenge going back to the bond, as whoever is in this position, not having a lot of time to build those relationships, because that takes obviously a long period of time, but getting out in the community right off the bat, visiting all the stakeholders, and then constant one-way communication. There's going to be many opportunities for two-way communications through meetings and events and going to various businesses and focus groups. And I'm sure you didn't have time to read through my 100-day action plan draft that I sent to John last night or this morning, I think it was. But in there, it really provides a timeline for me to get out there to all stakeholders. And then, but that one-way communication will be key. So digital newsletters, a weekly blog, making sure that I am spending energy and time so our staff and our families and all stakeholders know who I am, know what I bring to the table, and know what to expect as the next superintendent of South Lyon Schools.
Thank you. What are some examples of community activities for which you have provided leadership, and in what ways did they benefit your district?
Yeah, going back to the previous question, building those relationships, getting to know people, and making sure people know me, and people know that my passion is educating students, and while the bulk of that does happen within the four walls of a classroom, there's a lot of education and a lot of learning to be had out in the local businesses and the churches and the organizations. I'm part of quite a bit of service groups, Fenton Rotary, and I'll use Fenton Rotary as an example. So my part in Fenton Rotary in participating and volunteering and networking with the various Rotarians, the Fenton Rotary started a debate club. And so being able to network with that service group, ultimately, our middle school students benefit from that partnership. And inviting those groups in, so there's kind of that internal external is how I typically approach this. So you invite those stakeholders in, you invite the community in. One example, through our strategic planning process, we held focus groups and various meetings. So of course, students, parents, school board, huge part in those meetings. But we also reached out. We had business owners come in. One of the most interesting meetings I had was with a group of 12 realtors that I have since invited back in for other various focus groups and meetings. And some realtors lived in Fenton, but some did not. And the only experience they had was selling houses. And they will be the first ones to tell you that families shop for two things. They shop for a house and they shop for a school these days. And so being able to hear from realtors on what are some things that we've missed through this strategic planning process and setting priorities, what are families looking for, and vice versa, what in your hand to hand families as they go through houses and they ask you, where should we buy our next home? So that's kind of the inviting them in. And then a little bit what I've already talked about, that external where I go out into the community. So being involved, the service groups, some of the best meetings I've been able to speak at are at the local churches. Absolutely love bringing them up to date on what we're all about. We have great partnerships. We have volunteers from local churches that come in and tutor our students. And we have a backpack program. Our early childhood principal, Linda Mora, does a phenomenal job working with local clergy to make sure that our students that are low socioeconomic and parents are struggling, which that list has grown in the last month, that we're working with our local churches to make sure they're fed on the weekends.
Great, thank you. How do you think various stakeholders, parents, community staff, should be involved in our decision-making and in setting direction for our district?
Once again, going back, and I might repeat myself, and I apologize, understanding that everyone within the Southline Community School District is a stakeholder. And what that means is, as we make decisions, that they're going to be either directly impacted or indirectly. And so I'll kind of use two examples. With the strategic plan, we had a couple parent reps that sat in on our, well, I guess we're still sitting in on our executive team. Of course, school board members represented. We had some building principals represented. We wanted to make sure that the outcome of that strategic plan is to better us as a school district and ultimately better the community. And the people directly impacted by these decisions of what's baked into that plan and how we're going to be successful, our parents and our students. So hearing their voice through that process was absolutely key. And then you look at another opportunity that we are able to involve stakeholders is our sinking fund renewal that we had this past summer. And so you have to identify who's going to be directly impacted with that, and we have to have them at the table. So our director of operations, Joe Humper, absolutely phenomenal. Love his thinking and his point of view. A lot of what we were doing with our strategic plan in the teaching and learning area and so on, he wasn't necessarily a part of. But when we talk sinking fund and we talk what those projects are going to consist of, Joe was right at that table. So we have to identify who should be at the table put the right people on the bus, put the right people in the driver's seat. And then also, though, a lesson learned a couple years ago, for security reasons, we shut our track down during the day. We partnered with the Fenton Police Department. We hired Officer Tom Cole as a school resource officer. And what we found through threat assessments is we shut down our classrooms and our buildings during the day. Our buildings are absolutely secure, but we were taking our PE classes out to the track in the football field. And we had 20 to 30 people sometimes jogging the track. And we said, we got to look at that as a classroom. If we're going to take these measures to make sure our students and staff are secure, we have to do that outside as well. So we made those decisions. A few weeks later, I was walking to the transportation garage department that's next to the football field, and a group of community members, they saw I had a Fenton shirt on, and they approached me, and I introduced myself as superintendent, and we had a long conversation over how they were disappointed that our track was closed down. And as I explained the reason, they certainly understood, but Shane, that was a kick in the shin to me that, again, they weren't at the table. They weren't part of the conversation in the security threat assessments, but they were impacted by the decisions we made. So we have to vet those decisions through all the stakeholders. And with that comes communication through the process. And there's decisions I've made as superintendent. There's decisions that the board and myself have collectively made that certain stakeholders haven't been happy with. And that's okay. We know that's going to happen. But if they've been communicated with, they understand what the process was and why we made those decisions, and that we understand in their perspective where they're coming from, they still may not be happy, but I think for the most part, they can understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Randy Clark. I'll be giving you the next 3 questions regarding political awareness. To start off, equity and excellence are 2 themes that come up frequently in discussions about K-12 education. Do we need to make a choice between these issues, or can we do both? And could you explain?
Randy, great question. We absolutely must do both. So public schools, it is our mission. It is our duty to strive for and achieve both equity and excellence. And if you're not achieving equity, you can't use excellence in the same sentence. It just simply doesn't exist. We have to provide our students with a variety of opportunities and supports so that they can grow at their own pace. We have to meet students where they are. It's not when our students come through the door, we should not expect them to adapt to what our expectation is when it comes to what's fair and what's not fair. We have to adapt to our students. We have to adapt to our families. And equity doesn't necessarily always mean, in some people's eyes, equal or fair. And so we have to make sure that we're giving as many opportunities as we can and supports so each individual student are reaching their goals, but it goes beyond that. It's our job to make sure our students achieve more than they even dreamt of. And to do that, we have to set a non-negotiable that we will make sure that Southline Community Schools does provide equity among our families and our students, and for that matter, our staff. So this may look different for everyone. It's a variety of strategies, and I'm not naive. It's difficult to achieve equity, and it's difficult to really take on that mindset within an organization and really define what that means. But we can do that, and we strive for that, and we will accomplish that by addressing the social and emotional needs, and really kind of the COVID shutdown has really been a snapshot, I believe, of a few things. And one is what exactly is important for us as public school officials staff, school board, whatever it may be, what must come first? And it's the social emotional needs and meet the needs of our children, whether that's wraparound services, but also looking at really pinpointing those students that are coming from low socioeconomic, maybe students with disabilities, our English language learners. We owe it not only to those families and those students that are directly impacted, we owe it to those students that may not necessarily need extra supports, that may not necessarily need, that extra push because they have their basic needs met and they have supports at home. Teaching and modeling to our students that we all have a responsibility to, when they leave that stage at graduation and they go off to college or they go off to a career, they've learned what equity means, and they've learned that without it, you cannot be excellent as a person or as an organization. And so with that, and I apologize if I seem a little passionate because I get passionate about that, is being intentional about hiring and maintaining staff. And then it's our job to train staff on what it means to be an organization that puts equity and excellence on the same level. And it's our duty to do that.
Okay, thank you. In what specific ways do you envision working in a collaborative fashion with other Oakland County school districts and the Oakland ISD for the best interest of South Lyon students as well as the students throughout the county?
Well, I'll briefly speak about the experiences that I've had and continue to have in Genesee County. Dr. Hagel and Genesee Intermediate School District, just absolutely great partners. I was able, as an assistant superintendent in Swartz Creek before coming to Fenton, had the opportunity to work with my colleagues in the instruction and curriculum and assessment department, and working with some superintendents in various committees. When I became superintendent, the networking and really the friendships that have been built working with the local districts has helped me personally, which ultimately helps Fenton Public Schools. When I grow as a leader and I grow as a person, it's contagious, and I appreciate the friendships and the professional relationships that I've been able to build with local superintendents. I sit on a number of committees with the ISD, with other superintendents, the legislative committee, where we meet with both Democrat and Republican representatives from our areas monthly. I sit on the safety committee, the positive marketing committee, chair some of those committees, work with the United Way, Kettering University, Mott Community College, U of M Flint, through the GFEC, which is the Genesee Flint Educational Consortium. So I am very much would look forward to coming back to Oakland County. When I was in Birmingham, just worked with phenomenal people at Oakland schools. I perused the website the other day. Some of them are still working there. Of course, some turnover since 2012 when I left Birmingham. Still keep in contact with a lot of the people I built relationships with in Oakland County. They're off doing great things in other counties or other districts in Oakland County. But ultimately, it's my responsibility as superintendent to build those relationships and advocate for South Lyon Community Schools. I have to be at the table, networking, building those relationships. Fenton Public Schools, we work very closely with Linden and Lake Fenton, and Russ and Julie, the superintendents there. Fenton Public Schools has benefited greatly with those relationships. And on the outside, people look at school of choice. We should be competing. We should, be raising our fist at each other. And society, creates that competition within itself, and that's going to happen. Behind the scenes, it only does us good, and our students and our staff benefit from the way we can collaborate with one another. We have early colleges that we've collaborated with Mott and U of M that probably wouldn't have happened unless we came together. So those cohorts were large enough where those organizations wanted to meet with us. So that's key. I will be at Oakland schools. I already know some of the superintendents and have reached out to them and have had some conversations before tonight. Very much would be looking forward to kind of going back and reigniting those relationships and getting to meet and network. And then aside from that, other organizations within the community is key. I noticed South Lyon Education Foundation was on your website, spent some time on that website. The Fenton Area Fenton Education Foundation is so critical to Fenton Area Public Schools. The Birmingham Education Foundation, so critical. And I have no doubt South Lyon Education Foundation is the same. And just a quick note before I end, I was happy to see that I think it's Olive the Black Lab going to South Lyon East High School in the fall, therapy dog. And we're doing the same at Fenton High School. We have a staff member that has adopted Sunny. Sunny will be there in January. And this goes back to your previous question. That doesn't happen without those partnerships with local businesses and organizations. It's very expensive to train a therapy dog, and we're not spending general fund dollars for it. I can guarantee you that. And we've been able to get creative with partnerships and sponsorships to make that happen. And I have no doubt that's what South Lyon is doing as well.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning Olive. We're excited about that also. What impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
Well, it certainly has changed from the first year I was in a classroom in 1997, and then being even, I think back to when I was a principal, evaluating teachers every 3 years, and standardized testing and I apologize, teacher evaluation, correct?
What impact of standardized testing and teacher accountability?
Accountability. Thank you. It certainly has pointed us in the direction of accountability and a direction of high standards and rigor. And it also has really allowed us to be measured in such a way that we can compare ourselves to like districts because we're using the same assessments, SAT from a national standpoint, of course, MSTEP from a state standpoint. And so it really has driven public school districts to become laser focused on rigor, has set a very much a high ceiling when it comes to standards and what to that kind of setting that goal of what we have to reach. I think that's a good thing. I think accountability and standardizing, being able to look at like numbers is absolutely needed as we build multi-tiered system of support. And as we have to have a way of how are we successful. With that said, it should only be a piece of the puzzle. And it certainly is a large piece of the puzzle when it comes to what the state expects out of us as a public school district. And we certainly all understand that. And we certainly know that, the cut scores may change, and we know that the timing of the results coming back to us may not match up to what our school improvement teams need or what we need to kind of see those achievement gaps and so on. And that's why we need other measures in place. So local assessments, those formative assessments are key, and really building a comprehensive set of assessments that's really standardized. And what I mean by standardized is being able to go into any classroom in South Lyon Community Schools, and our teachers understand how we assess students. Our teachers understand the common way that we're going to look at that data, make decisions based on that data. And that's something in Fenton Area Public Schools we've worked very hard to really standardize across the district. So that high achieving expectation, those standards, and that rigor is happening in every classroom. So pointing to a sense of accountability is key and very important. From a teacher standpoint, teacher evaluation certainly has changed over the years. I can tell you, being married to a teacher who constantly reminds me that I'm a superintendent and I don't know what I'm talking about. but we've had, she does a phenomenal job for me. So, of course, talking with the teachers in Fenton and rolling up my sleeves and working with Heidi Soselski, our executive director for teaching and learning, that's key. But understanding ultimately what the high stakes, what that has done. And unfortunately, and no one to blame here other than that it is what it is. When you raise accountability and you raise those standardized testing to high stakes like we have, fear and anxiety is going to bubble up. And unfortunately, that is a consequence of what has happened over the years. And I continue to be a superintendent in Fenton. I would continue to take this mindset and work with the administrative staff and the teachers and the school board in South Lyon. It's not an elephant in the room. We know that educators, we are fearful to take risk. When anxiety, and there, it's science, it's biology. When anxiety is up, right, we fight or we freeze, we flight, and our teachers are absolutely phenomenal. We want our teachers to have autonomy. We want our teachers to be innovators and entrepreneurs, and we want that to really model for our students and what those skill sets and what that looks like. So attacking that fear and anxiety is key when it comes to standardized testing and teacher evaluations or accountability.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Dashner.
Thanks, Randy. Next three questions are going to be in the finance area. The first one is describe your experience with budget development and financial management, including making difficult budget cuts.
Yeah, thank you. I guess, and this may sound weird, but I wouldn't have said this a couple of years ago. I'm very blessed to have come into Fenton Area Public Schools when I did as superintendent. We were in a state of crisis. We were on the state fiscal distress list. At the time, we were hovering right around 2% fund balance. Dr. Doug Bush, who's our executive director for finance, personnel and finance, made some tough decisions the year before I came in as interim superintendent. It was below 1%, the fund balance actually, and when I came in, still very much a crisis, financial crisis. We had some decisions to make, whether to work with the local ISD or the state. We chose to work with the Genesee Intermediate School District, essentially, who was reporting to the state. And so for me as a new superintendent to come in under those circumstances, at the time, like, I wouldn't tell you I felt blessed. I do now, because that certainly was a tough time for everyone, all stakeholders, and a tough time as a new superintendent, a tough time for the school board to start looking at what that means to develop a budget, what that means for long-term plans, because we were getting ready to start another strategic plan cycle as well. So with that said, from a reduction perspective, really looking at everything. I look back to the days where sticky notes were up on my whiteboard and really being divergent thinkers. I will tell you, we spent time on what does it mean to think, to be a divergent leader? What does it mean to, take the lighthouse approach to developing a budget to a laser approach and really going down to those categorials and looking at everything? I can tell you that Stacy Witt, Assistant Superintendent for Business Services at Finance, that if I am named the superintendent of South Lyon Community Schools, give Dr. Bush a call, because Doug was absolutely sick of me. We spent a lot of time together. And so part of developing a budget in a time of crisis, which, let's not fool ourselves, we are there now. We will be going into next year. All signs point to we'll be right back to where we were a decade ago, if not worse. is you taking that time and looking at going from lighthouse to laser focus, and then moving out from there. Ultimately, from that, and I could talk about this forever, but based on time, I'll tell you what the ultimate result was. We negotiated a contract with the teachers union, and it took, talk about all stakeholders. Our teachers stepped up to the plate. We spent a lot of time with our teachers, and ultimately we negotiated a contract that moved us away from a block staffing model that Fenton had known for 20 years, and ultimately saving us approximately $1 million, and went to a 6-hour day, a traditional staffing model. We were able to do that, collaborating with the teachers, making some tough decisions. Hard. I look back to those marathon days of working with them and collaborating and negotiating, working with the school board, communicating to all stakeholders. But ultimately, we made that tough decision. And among other things, we were able to come out with an agreement that really helped us through that that time of crisis, and then we were able to, 2 years had gone by with no spending on teaching and learning, nothing in the curriculum budget. And so we were able to give our teachers, pay our teachers in that contract. We were also able to put a full-time curriculum director back at central office. And in fast forward, we are at 11% fund balance. We were off the state fiscal distress list 3 years early than what had been expected. And I'm very proud and appreciative of all the stakeholders that worked through that. So we got creative, and we worked through that. The other part of developing a budget is the revenue side. And again, going back to my answer with accountability and standardized testing and high stakes, nothing gets more high stakes than school financing. If you know, I tell people all the time in the finance department, I tell our alternative ed director that's running our high school with the seat time waiver, I do not want to be on the front page of the paper. We are going to do everything right. We're going to do it with integrity. We're going to be open and transparent, and we're going to follow the rules, and we're going to follow the laws. And so from a revenue standpoint, we had to look at what options do we have? You know, what is it exactly? What can we do to get creative? And when we're fearful and that anxiety is there, it's hard to be innovative, and it's hard to look at that revenue side. So a challenge of developing a budget in a crisis and looking at unstable situation, spend time on that mindset. Spend time on going back to being that calm and collective leader, and really removing the anxiety from the people that count. So our assistant superintendent for finance, our building principals, when we look at through their budgets, when I present to the school board and the finance committee, the board committee, we're not going to do it in a fearful lens. We're going to be intentional and talk about our anxieties and what's the worst fears we have, and then we're going to dig in. So we were able to do that and think rationally and not think emotionally. And through that, the board approved a partnership with Gear Up to Lead, which is the nonprofit that I helped to start in 2015. And ultimately, we worked through Gear Up to Lead to run a Gear Up Academy, which is an alternative school that we did not have. And so the board was able to be innovative and see the vision and the future. And we now have 83 students in Gear Up Academy. That's 83 FTE that wouldn't have been there without the partnership. And that's so being creative and innovative. And lastly, with the revenue side, I call it butts in seats. And there's nothing more important and critical than having our enrollment continue that trend up. And South Line has done a phenomenal job over the last few years of where South Line's enrollment, of course, you guys know that, but looking at the trends and looking at the data, the kindergarten enrollment coming in is very high, which is promising. and being able to brag about the district and word of mouth and keeping people within South Lyon and having people choose to school of choice in, that is huge for us. And then finally, I'll end it with this. As you develop a budget during a crisis, and everything, I look back as a superintendent leading a district to do that, it does not happen without building positive relationships. Relationships matter. And I look back, and the teachers that we worked with at that negotiation table, that doesn't happen unless we value one another. That doesn't happen unless they trust me as a superintendent and they trust the school board. So again, going back to building those positive relationships, everybody can hold hands and skip down the street when things are good. It's through the adversity that really tests those relationships, and you have to have that foundation there. And very proud of the relationships that we've been able to build, administrative and board, with the teachers and with the other stakeholders to get us through that time.
Thank you. Just so you know, we've got about 35 minutes left and we're about halfway through the questions. So running a little bit long, just so you know. Next question, what opportunities do you believe budget limitations present? And given the uncertainty of funding for the 2021 school year, what would be your 3 top budgeting priorities?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the heads up. I haven't been keeping up on the time. I think, again, the priority, first and foremost, would be relationship building, getting to know the board. I would have to come in and get to know the 7 of you, and you would have to get to know me in a very fast way. And I would look forward to doing that. I absolutely love the relationships that I have with our school board, and being transparent and being honest with one another. And anytime you're looking at reductions in the budget, or anytime you're looking at creative ways to bring in revenue, there has to be a sense of trust. There has to be integrity among the team, and there has to be the ability to speak our minds and to respect where everybody's coming from. So first and foremost, relationships are key, and that would have to really take place very quickly. I have that kind of pointed out in my 100-day plan. If the Chinese symbol for crisis, it has 2 symbols, danger and opportunity. And that's something we can either look at this as danger, or we can look at it as an opportunity. And it goes back to what I explained in the previous question, is looking at those opportunities that lie within the crisis. Some of the inventions over the history of our country happen in times of crisis, where we just have to look at things differently, and we have to come to a mindset that the status quo may not be what's best for our students. So the priorities would be, first and foremost, anything that we decide to go outside the status quo. And I like to use the term, we're going to be positive deviants. We're going to deviate from the status quo for a positive outcome. So first and foremost, aside from relationships, would be we do everything in our power not to touch the classroom. We look at that budget, again, from lighthouse to laser focus, and we see what we can do to balance that budget and to make sure the outcome, the budget I'm presenting to you as superintendent, and a budget that you guys has certainly agreed with and are going to approve, is we have tried like at heck to stay away from the classroom and to make sure that ultimately the reason why we're here is for our students. And the only way to enhance our students' experiences is to make sure our teachers have what they need, they're getting paid what they need, and we're supporting them in the way that they need. So we have to make sure that that's where we start. Going back ultimately and not knowing what the future holds, if we have to dig into that somehow, some way, for instance, the block scheduling, when it went away, our students lost an elective. We knew that was going to happen. We communicated that, we prepared everybody, and out of that crisis became an opportunity. We actually started a credit forward program that we continue to have. So our middle school students and our high school students can earn high school credit during the summer online through summer school. So summer school transitioned from a credit recovery to both a credit recovery and a credit forward. So if you wanted to be in the marching band your freshman year under a traditional 6-hour day, that wasn't going to happen. If you took PE and health or a world language in the summer and you knocked that credit out, you now can join the marching band. So relationships is key. Staying away from the classroom as much as possible. So I talk about that divergent thinking and those sticky notes up on the board and working with those stakeholders at the table. The school board would absolutely be critical to that, and that bridge out to the community. And then finally digging into the strategic plan. There's a reason why the school community went through this hard work, and I believe it's 2017. It's a 5-year plan, which would end in 2022. I would want to make sure, depending on what that budget looks like in the end, that we go back in the strategic plan and we revisit what those goals are. And we want to make sure that our strategic plan is aligning with what is going on in the classroom, what our goals are as a school community. Otherwise, we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Thank you. And my final question for you is, what ideas might you explore to obtain additional revenue for the district? Have you had success in procuring additional funds for your district? And if so, how?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll try to answer this very quickly, knowing time is going to run out. It goes back to building relationships, networking, working with the colleges and the universities to offer post-secondary opportunities that are inexpensive for our students and inexpensive for us. It's getting innovative, like we did with starting our alternative high school. We had numerous of students that needed to be educated in outside the 4 walls, and they were going to other districts. We started our own alternative high school. As I pointed out, we went from 15 students the first year. We are at 83, and that's only because we've capped it based on staffing. We look to go to 120 to 130 next year. That's bringing in that FTE. We partnered with a marketing firm. We don't do a very good job in public education marketing ourselves. We have to be out there bragging. We have to be out there showing our points of pride constantly. And there's a lot of research that goes into marketing that I simply don't know as a superintendent, and I wouldn't expect any of you unless you work in the marketing fields. And so we went out and for a very small amount of money of what we're getting back in return, we redesigned our website. Our social media is outstanding. We're constantly highlighting what's going on in the district. How are we impacting the community as a whole, as a school district? Our enrollment has been trending upwards as well. I have to attribute some of that to the marketing that we're doing, the school of choice students that are coming in. Every grant possibility we have to take advantage of. Excuse me. The Michigan State Police grant, it was tough. We worked with our director of technology and the Fenton Police Department, but we received $100,000 last year, which ultimately saved us from general fund dollars to put security cameras into our elementary schools. Also working with Southern Lakes, they run our community programs. They were running our pool. We took that over, and politically it was tough. I had a lot of conversations with the city, a lot of conversations with the representatives from Southern Lakes. Again, decisions they were not happy about, but the relationships that I was able to build and the communication, keeping them in the loop of what we were doing, why we were doing it. We now pull in $30,000 a year that we did not because they were running our pool. So getting creative in those ways. And to be specific with South Lyon, the first couple months on the job, working with you, working with the administrative team, meeting people, looking at the budget, looking at the strategic plan, and looking at it with eyes wide open would be key to list what exactly is needed for additional revenue to come into South Lyon.
Thank you. I have the next 3 questions. They deal with instruction and curriculum. We're down to just less than 30 minutes, and this is question number 13 out of 21. So we don't want to run, we can't run over on time.
Absolutely.
So what experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap based on economic opportunities and other demographic factors?
Absolutely. Great. So I'm just thinking we've spent a lot of time developing a multi-tier system of support. Again, distributive leadership. Heidi Soselski, our executive director, working with Dr. Courtney Such, our special ed director, and I could go on and on of who's responsible for developing. And we're in really the end of year one, going into year two. But part of MTSS is that data piece and looking at those gaps. And not just the gaps with low socioeconomics, but the gaps of our higher learners and looking at personalizing instruction. So 2 quick examples. I think from an elementary perspective, we have a building that's close to 50% free and reduced lunch. It's a title building. The building principal brought the idea from her previous district of what I need time, meaning every day students are shared amongst the teaching staff and really honing in on direct instruction to close the gap where they are. So it goes aside from the whole instruction and really narrows that down. We have seen, we're in year two, absolutely great strides. Our student growth percentile from that elementary is number 1 in the district. And looking at the 5th graders that have gone into the middle school, the following year, those students' SGPs are above the other students. So in year 2, we've implemented that in our other title building this year. They're in year 1, and I applaud their efforts. So really looking at those low socioeconomic gaps and the learning gaps, or I should say the student growth gaps. We use NWEA along with local assessments, and really that laser focus on what each individual needs and giving them time during the day and the appropriate teachers in front of them to give them those supports. And then at the secondary level, something that I've just absolutely, I can't speak enough about our partnership with Mott Community College and the early middle college. We partnered with Linden Community Schools and Lake Fenton Schools. This is through a collaborative effort to come up with a cohort of students that are starting to take classes at Mott Community College their junior year. We hired a Kelly Boyke, who's phenomenal, working with these students from kind of that wraparound, making sure they have what they need as college students. But what's so amazing about these students is that we focused in on low socioeconomic, we focused in on a grade point average between 2 and 2.5, and we focused in on first generation college students. And if you want to put tears in your eyes, well, you can't now, maybe we virtually, but go visit their cohort on Friday where they get together with Mrs. Boyke and they talk about the challenges of taking college classes and the pride that they have that they're going to leave Fenton High School with an associate's degree is just absolutely phenomenal. So those are 2 examples of really keying in on those achievement gaps with low socioeconomics, and goes back to equity. They're getting some services that some of our students don't need, and we have to personalize that instruction and those wraparound services.
What do you believe are currently the biggest challenges with special education in our region, and how should those challenges be addressed?
Yeah, well, the challenge of funding is across the board, but we can put a whole nother layer of challenge when it comes to special ed. It's always been a challenge. We know special education is underfunded. You look at the results of the study. I think the results came out 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, that shows that base foundation schools are underfunded. No doubt that special education is threefold. So that's a huge challenge. Again, what we've been able to do is partner with local districts and create classrooms, the consortium, to share students. And so we house some categorical rooms. Linden and Lake Fenton also house those. So where we may have 5 students that are emotionally impaired, in other districts, the school districts may have 2 and then 3, putting those students together, hiring 1 teacher, and we share the load of those costs. So that's something, and I in South Lyon may be doing that It's something I would want to know if that's happening. If not, what are opportunities out there? I'd want to obviously sit down with a special ed director and Lisa Kudrow, and I apologize if I didn't get the last name correctly, but the assistant superintendent for curriculum. And are there ways to collaborate? And then within the district, moving to a co-teaching model versus a coaching model, is what we're doing now working as far as the achievement goes? And if that's the case, are there other things we can shift around that, one, makes more sense under the teaching and learning perspective, but will help our budget as well? So I'd really need to dig in deep. The other challenge for special ed is finding quality staff. There's a teacher shortage across our state. We know that. We've been able to hire phenomenal special ed teachers in my time as superintendent. But unfortunately, it's great for Fenton, but it's bad for the district that we took that teacher from. And I'll admit, we've hired teachers from Oakland County, and then Oakland County has hired teachers away from us. And so we're just trading quality teachers. And we have to find a way to bring quality teachers into South Lyon and keep them there, and then make sure that we train not only the special ed teachers, but we're giving the training and the support of our regular ed teachers, because those trends of students with special needs and students with needs that we haven't seen before, we're experiencing that at a very young age. All of our teaching staff and all of our paraprofessionals essentially need those supports and the training. And what we've done in Fenton, we've utilized our experts in the special education fields to help train those teachers within their buildings and within their departments.
And my final question, how would you meet the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for our students?
Yeah, I'm sorry, college readiness?
How do we meet the needs of our college readiness students while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities?
Gotcha, thank you. Thank you. First and foremost, as a school community, we need to define what college and career readiness means. I believe South Lyon has done that. Looking through your strategic plan, looking at the achievement, student achievement data is outstanding. Looking at like districts from a base foundation district and how South Lyon students are achieving on the SAT compared to districts that are receiving hundreds, if not thousands more per pupil is outstanding. So I'm going to guess that South Lyon has defined what it means to be college ready, has defined what it means to be career ready. So for me as a superintendent to come in and learn what's the verbiage, what's the common language, what does it mean to be college and career ready? And then the curriculum needs to be rigorous, and it needs to be aligned with both college and career readiness, and it needs to meet that national standard. That is huge. So those standards are aligned, and ultimately, and going back to a question that I answered, is that's happening in every classroom across the school community. That is key. And then how do we know we're successful? So if we defined it and we've built our curriculum, created our curriculum, aligned our assessments, our teachers are instructing in such a way that is aligned with college and career readiness to deliver that curriculum, how do we know we are successful? So if we have a student that wants to go off into a skilled trades and working side by side with a student that is going off to the University of Michigan, those students should be able to work on a project together, to learn the same skill sets, to be challenged in the same manner, and to walk away ready to be successful in whether that career track or the college track. And it's up to us to define what does it mean. So how are we assessing our students? What feedback are we getting from those college freshmen that graduated a year early? How many of them have dropped out? How many of them have failed a college math class but took calculus at South Lyon High School? We need to do a good job of understanding what, just because they leave us doesn't mean that viable data is important to us, as we're making sure that they're prepared no matter what choices they make. And then finally, those, it's a cliche, but those soft skills, I'll just throw the term out there, and really, I think they're the most important skills. I noticed habits of mind that South Lyon has really dedicated themselves, which is absolutely phenomenal. The visible thinking to understand how our brains work. So having 3 children raised with, by the same parents, under the same household, and they're doing 3 totally different things with their lives, different expertise, different interests, but they all need to know how their brain works, how they learn, and they have to be challenged. And they were challenged in their high school years, and it's because that rigorous curriculum and the follow through to make sure that no matter what a student wants to do with their life, we are pushing them and making sure we're supporting them to achieve those goals.
Hello, I have the next 3 questions, and I wanted to let you know we're not trying to hustle you along. We appreciate your passion, but we want to make sure you have the same opportunity as everybody else. So just giving you a heads up that we have about 6 questions remaining. We're under 15 minutes at this point, just to help you pace yourself. And my questions are related to leadership attributes. And my first is, what was the most difficult situation that you've had to deal with in your educational career, and how was it resolved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most difficult situations I've been in as a superintendent, which I think is critical, that experience coming into a superintendency role, I can't discuss due to confidentiality, but I'll try my best to explain in about 1 minute. There's been a handful of situations as superintendent that have been very difficult, much more difficult than what I may have experienced as a building principal or assistant superintendent. And those really stem from decisions other people have made. So whether it's a staff member or maybe a student, but I'm the face of the district. I have to make sure that I am making decisions, and I am facing that adversity and representing the school district. So whether it's talking with lawyers, meeting with lawyers, whether it's with 5 cameras in my face, I have to be calm, I have to be collective, and I have to make sure that I am representing South Lyon Community Schools in a very professional way with integrity and resolve. And I've had to do that, unfortunately, in Fenton Area Public Schools as superintendent. And part of that is setting, to hopefully minimize or mitigate those situations, setting expectations of what is expected, making sure our staff and our students know the laws, the board policies, what it means to adhere to those policies. And so just a quick example without detail. Last year, I woke up at 6 a.m. My phone had been blowing up all night. Something occurred that caught the local, state, and national attention, media attention. And I didn't have a lot of time to necessarily take a deep breath. Went into work early, called my school board, brought them up to date, called the high school principal, was filled in on exactly what he knew. And within 45 minutes of being at the ad building, I had news crew knocking at the door. My administrative assistant came down and said 2 local news channels were on the phone. I could have easily said, I can't talk with them. I said, good, get them in here. It was the situation presented itself. I had to get out in front of it, and I had to let our school community know that that the school board, myself as superintendent, and the school community as a whole is not represented of what had occurred the day before. And that was tough. That was very difficult to do that, but it's something I owed our school community, that I owed our school board. And ultimately, the feedback I received from many stakeholders is that that was the right decision to do.
Thank you. All right, next question. What are the key elements needed to establish and maintain a healthy and effective working relationship between you and our board?
Yeah, thank you. I can't stress enough how important it is. Our relationship is to me personally, that I know would be to you personally. And ultimately, I can't stress how important it is. I'm sure you know, as school board, a transparent and honest and positive relationship as it impacts our staff, our students, and our school community. I absolutely respect and thrive with our school board. And trust me, it's not because we all agree. It's not because they agree. It's because we got to know each other. We know what our purpose is in life. I know what their purpose is to sit on the board. They know what my passion is and how much effort and energy I put in being a superintendent. So it's very important that we get to know each other and establish that strong relationship for the benefit of our school community. Full transparency and full trust is key, and that goes both ways. You may have heard this term, but absolutely no surprises. I never want to put the school board in a position where you don't know what is potentially coming down the line, where you don't know where there may be some critical decisions coming or what's been done. You know, if there's a police officer that's at a school, you're going to know about it. And all the way up to obviously those big decisions you're going to be a part of on the ground floor. And it's that trust going back and forth, no surprises, vice versa. You know, don't want to get caught at a board meeting or out in the community with something that I should have known ahead of time. So that is so key to a successful school district, is a trusting transparency relationship. And people are at ease. When people know that the superintendent and the school board work closely together, it absolutely helps us move forward. So with that, board workshops and retreats, specifically keying in on those relationships, individual coffees, just something, I'll share with you some things I've done, continue to do in Fenton, individual meetings, grabbing a cup of coffee, talking about things that may have nothing to do on the board agenda at that time, and getting to know, you know, I want you to know Nicole and our three children and who I am as a person. I think that's key because we are immersed into the community. Nicole knows that, you know, with the superintendent job, I'm hired, but she's hired too, essentially. So, you know, getting to know that subcommittee format is crucial for that. I know South Lyon operates under that. I think it's Anthony, you're a building principal, I believe in Livonia or Utica or one, and I apologize. I would foresee Anthony and I sitting down and just talking, teaching and learning, and then connecting that back and we have a former teacher on our teaching and learning subcommittee for a reason. Because they bring expertise. And so it is crucial to have a trusting and transparent relationship.
All right, thank you very much. And my final question, given your research on our district, what do you believe our vision for the future should be? And how might you inspire and engage the entire district in pursuit of the vision?
Okay, I'm going to answer that 1 minute or less. I'm looking at the time here. Well, knowing South Lyon is a high achieving school with high expectations and is operating as a base foundation district at a very high level, I would root that vision through good to great. And I don't know if you've read Jim Collins' book or if you have any experience, but a quote from that book is, "Good is the enemy of great." And, you know, I have experience working in Birmingham that is very comparable as far as in the same county, obviously operating beyond the base foundation, but having very high expectations and families having very high expectations. Knowing South Lyon is there, that vision has to really create a sense of improvement. And that is difficult to do when we're achieving at such a high level. So we're moving good to great, filtering it through that lens is key. So establishing those relationships with the stakeholders and having growth mindset play a part. You know, a lot of people use Michael Jordan as an example. I do all the time, where he could have easily walked away with 3 championships and he's done. But he came back and he went from good to great, and he focused in on defense and he focused in on parts of his game that he needed improvement. The message has to be to our stakeholders, our ceiling, we have not reached the ceiling. We never will. That's what a growth mindset means. And if we think we raise that ceiling, guess what? We're gonna build another floor. So it's got to be, our vision has to be rooted through moving from good to great. And that's just being honest of who I am to the school community, getting the most out of everybody. And if individually, if we grow, collectively, our school organization grows.
Okay, I'm going to jump right into my next question for you. Please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team.
Yeah, so I'm experiencing that now with my executive team and our administrative group. But now keep in mind, this is my 4th year as superintendent, and they'll be the first ones to tell you it takes time. I started my time as superintendent with the book study, Susan Scott, Fierce Conversations. If you haven't read it, please do. It's phenomenal. Administrator, 4 years later, they are still coming back to me and using those analogies as we have individual and collective conversations. We have gone through adaptive school training and cognitive coaching training. We're very intentional about setting norms, and we're very intentional about what the agenda is. And to make sure, I'm sure in my early days, people walked out and said, well, another wasted time, wasted meeting. I know I've improved immensely running administrative meetings. I know they've improved going back to their building and modeling that. And a high functioning team only gets there if, they say it's the book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell. How many hours does it take to, I think 10,000 hours to become an expert? We're in the 4th year of operating as a team, and we still haven't reached where we could reach. But it is absolutely wonderful to sit down collectively and operate in such a way that we can push each other's buttons. We can push back. I told them I am not to see one person giving me the corporate nod. You are to speak your mind, and we are. And again, it goes back to the relationship that I have with our school board, and I would hope that we could build, if I'm superintendent at South Lyon, those fierce conversations take place because we trust each other and we respect each other. But being intentional about creating what the cognitive coaching, and the training of what it means to set norms, live by those norms, and make decisions as a group and go through those decision-making processes.
Great. Got about 2 minutes left, I believe. So
yes, sir.
How would your president of your teachers union describe you?
Great question. I was on a Zoom meeting with Pam this morning. First and foremost, Pam and I look at each other as educators. She is a innovative teacher. She teaches technology in the district. She used to be marching band and still helps with marching band. Her passion is teaching kids. I have to look across the table and understand that. She has to look to me and understand my passion for educating students, my passion for public education. And again, building that relationship, absolutely. We have been in very difficult conversations, individually and with groups. But in the end, we respect one another. I think she would describe me as a very hardworking superintendent that is well known in the community, that is committed to Fenton. She sees my truck at the administration office early in the morning and late at night. I think she would describe me as a passionate person that works hard with integrity. And a good example of this, and I won't go into detail because of the time, but we're still negotiating a contract, and it certainly has been in the news, and it's tough. It's tough, and Pam and I have been at each other, absolutely. But when it was time to make decisions based on the shutdown, we were on the phone late at night, and all of that set aside because we respect one another, and ultimately, I'm an educator, she's an educator, and we both do what's best for kids.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Hartley, we appreciate your interest in the superintendent position for South Lyon Community Schools. The board is interviewing 6 candidates, and we plan to conduct our second interviews next week, and we will let you know Thursday night where you stand in the search process. Thank you for coming, and we enjoyed meeting you.
All right, I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
With that, do we want to reconvene at 7:40 with our next candidate? Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes.
So we'll go on a 10-minute break.
You're muted there, sir.
That's gracious.
There we go.
How's everybody doing? Nice to see you.
Good.
Hello.
Good.
Okay, we will get right into this then.
Fantastic.
On behalf of the Board of Education of South Lyon Community Schools, I would like to welcome Matthew Outlaw to this interview for the position of superintendent. Dr. Outlaw is currently superintendent of the Brandon School District in Ortonville, Michigan. We can start off with introductions for you. I'm Carrie Hanshaw, president of the South Lyon School Board.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Eric Kennedy, vice president of the school board.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Anthony Abate. I'm currently the board secretary.
Great. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Craig Dashner. I'm the treasurer of the school board.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And nice to see you, Randy Clark, trustee.
Nice to meet you as well.
And I'm Jenny Ertel, board trustee. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, and I'm Dan Schwegler, board trustee. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Okay, I will take just a moment to describe our format. The interview may take up to 90 minutes. There will be 21 questions from the board. And toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give the candidate an opportunity to ask questions of the board or make a closing statement. And we would like to let you know if time is becoming an issue, we'll let you know that, so you'll need to pick up your responses. Also, audience feedback may be submitted electronically. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the board, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in the process. And also, just so you know, all of us are taking notes in some capacity. So if we're not looking at the screen, that's what we're doing.
All right, great.
Okay. With that, I will jump right in with the first question. While we have had the opportunity to review your application materials, those watching at home have not. Please briefly review your background and share what causes you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
Absolutely. I want to just begin by saying thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be here. As you know, South Lyon is a special community. As a kid, one of my two of my best friends lived just off of Marshall Road, and I spent a lot of my youth running around South Lyon. And I have a couple cousins that graduated from South Lyon High School, and I have a lot of connections in the community. So this community is pretty special, and I'm thrilled to be here interviewing for this position. You have the specifics of my resume, so I'm going to go over it fairly quickly. But this is my end of my 24th year in education. I've done a little bit of everything over those 24 years. I've been a teacher, a coach, a club sponsor. I've been an athletic director. I've been an assistant principal, and I've spent 6 years as a superintendent right here in Oakland County. In addition to that, I've been a professor. I've been a researcher. I've done all kinds of things during the course of my career that have helped really prepare me to be here today. When I think about the superintendent position, to me, there's 5 big categories for a successful superintendent. That's teaching and learning, it's personnel, it's business, finance, it's public relations, and it's the legislative side of things. And I have considerable experience in each of those 5 areas. Teaching and learning, that's my bread and butter. Over the past 24 years, I've been an instruction leader. I've done everything from curriculum reviews to introducing new programs. I have just really worked hard to improve teaching and learning, and it's been a great part of my career. But in addition to that, I've been HR director in Brandon for the past 6 years. I've negotiated many contracts and done staffing for a district. On the financial side, I had the opportunity to study under Mike Adonisio, who's one of the foremost educational economists in the country. And I studied under him. And I've actually been a professor of school finance for Oakland University since 2015. As a superintendent in a mid-sized district like Brandon, you have the opportunity to be the lead person when it comes to public relations. And I've learned a lot in that area. We've had some really good successes in that area as well. And then the final category that I would throw out would be legislative. And I'm one of the leaders in the county as it relates to legislative matter from the superintendent group. I'm involved at the state level and do know my way around Lansing a little bit. So when I look at those 5 things, I think the experience that I have has prepared me well to be here today. After that, the things that are not in the resume, there's a whole bunch of things that I hope are able to come out tonight. But if you were to have a chance to speak with some of the people that know me well, they would probably talk about that I'm a really optimistic person. I'm positive and energetic. I really love what I do for a living. I'm very passionate about being an educator. I'm passionate about what we do for kids. I value collaboration greatly. That is something that's very important to me that came from my coaching background, of that concept of building teams. I am a proactive communicator and problem solver, and I can go on, but there are a number of things that I think would serve me well as superintendent here. On the private, personal side of things, I am married. My wife, Nicole, is a teacher in Pinckney. She's a Spanish teacher at the middle school. And I have 2 children. My son, Tyler, is 13 years old, and my daughter is 10 years old, my daughter, Hannah. And the last thing I would just say is the position of superintendent. And the reason I'm here today is the position of superintendent is so incredibly important. Over the past 6 years, I've come to appreciate just how important a superintendent and school boards are for not just the kids, but their families, not just the staff, but their families, and also the community at large. It's a huge responsibility. I am up to the challenge, and I'm really motivated to do this job. I'm thrilled to be here today, and again, thank you so much for having me here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Given what you know about South Lyon Community Schools, please tell us what you believe are the most immediate challenges we face, as well as the most critical long-term challenge we will need to address.
On the immediate challenges, I think that I would start with, I would want to spend a lot of time talking with stakeholders that are already here. It's from the outside. You can read and look and you can do all these things, but I think whoever gets this job is going to need to take a considerable amount of time talking, listening to those people that are inside this system. I think I would start with the school board. Then I would move on to staff and families and really solicit a lot of feedback on those immediate concerns. In the short run, I see some of the immediate concerns being, number one, being the bond. I know that was delayed from May into August. That is incredibly important. I've had a chance to go around and look at the buildings and kind of look through your schematics and your plan and everything like that. And I just see a huge need to deliver on that bond. So short term, whoever gets this job, that's going to have to be top priority, number one. 2, I think, is going to be the COVID-19 alternate universe we're kind of living in these days, is figuring out what we're going to do in the fall. And I know that's a moving target, but that is a very serious question that's out there. And I know there's a lot of conversation, but we have to be, as school systems, I think we have to be really committed to making the fall as valuable as possible, no matter what is thrown our way. So what will school look like in the fall, and what adjustments need to be made? I would say that's the second one. And then I would say the biggest long-term, there's many long-term things, obviously improving teaching and learning and things like that. But I see one of the biggest things that's coming up is going to be the ripple effect from this pandemic that's taking place. The financial side of it, I think that there's going to be 2 or 3 years where budgeting and making wise decisions and really planning ahead is going to be absolutely paramount. And I think that we, as all of our schools, I think we're going to have to be very careful. We're going to have to plan ahead. We're going to have to make good decisions. And I think we probably have about 3 years to get out of what has happened right now. So I think that would be the long-term one for me.
Okay. What was your role in your district's COVID-19 response? And with what you know today, what would you do differently?
Sure. So I was the point person on the project. In our district, I had our teams, our cabinet, our district leadership team. We began talking about the what if about the first week of March. My wife has a friend that is in China. Her husband works for Daimler. And I had heard some of the things that they were doing with schools. And I told our team that this is inevitable. It is coming. So we started reaching out and pulling together our plan pretty early. I have a lot of connections at the college level, and my curriculum director has a lot of connections as well. And we started reaching out to people across the country that were a little bit of ahead of us, planning and really putting things in place. As we got closer to the governor's first directive, we started looping in our administrative team and also some of our teacher leaders to start gaining some of the feedback about what we might be able to do. So my role in this obviously was the big picture and also ensuring that we were collaborating along the way. So we slowly but surely came together with our plan. The feedback that we received from all the different stakeholders in this, which also included parents, reached out, and I had a number of parents that weighed in on what we were doing. That really put us in a great position. So when that order came, just like everybody else, we spent 2 weeks kind of experimenting and doing some of the enrichment activities. And then when we got the official order, we executed and we put everything in place. We did those final things, and we launched very early in the process, and things have gone well. Honestly, I would not do anything differently. It was not an easy process. It was early mornings, working at 5:30 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, pretty much every day. But we worked like crazy, and we brought everybody in. We got all the voices to the table, and I think as a result, I think we did best by our students in Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I have the next 3 questions, and they are in regard to district relations. Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to the Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with a diverse group of district stakeholders.
Sure. So the role of the superintendent is a connector. The superintendent is constantly connecting individuals and groups of people to what we're doing and where we're going as a school district. So that's what I do every day. That's what school leaders do every day. So what are the things that I do? Obviously, it's about communication. It's about making yourself accessible. I'm highly visible. I'm everywhere. And I'm in the schools regularly with the students. I'm at events where I'm able to connect and talk with parents. We have formal opportunities for stakeholders to be involved with parent meetings, PTOs, coffees, all those different types of things where people can get engaged. But it's the role of the superintendent and the school leaders to bring those diverse groups into that conversation. There are many different interests in a school district. You have athletics and performing arts, and you have elementary, high school, middle school. You have all of these different, you have honor students, CTE. And as a superintendent is trying to make sure that you bring all voices to the table and ensuring that they have a chance to weigh in about the future of the South Lyon School District. It's really important. So it's what I do on a daily basis, and I actually love that part of the job. So thank you.
Thank you. What are some examples of community activities for which you have provided leadership, and in what ways did they benefit your district?
So on this question here, I think a superintendent is a community leader, not a school leader. Really, when you look at a small town, I grew up in Brighton. South Lyon is just like Brighton. Every town is either a small town or it used to be a small town. And the way I look at it, schools are the fiber that really connects these small towns and connects people across the community. So I've taken that role very seriously as a school and community leader. Obviously, within the school, I do a lot of things with outreach and getting our people out into the community. but I'm also involved with everything in the community. I was part of the Chamber of Commerce. The Lions Club in town is where all the business leaders are at, and I'm a member of the Lions Club and the Rotary Club, and I've worked with the Downtown Development Authority. And so I've done a lot of work, a lot of connecting, because at the end of the day, the success of the school is dependent on the success of the community. And I believe that the success of the community is dependent on the success of the school. So those two things are really important to me. As far as specific examples, one of the areas that I've really tried to partner with our different municipalities has been on marketing the community. And as a school district, we do a lot of marketing, social media, and all kinds of different marketing. We have a real marketing effort. And I've worked together with some of the business leaders and Downtown Development Authority leaders to try to work together. While we're marketing the schools, we could be marketing the community and vice versa. So I would say that's probably the area that that's been the most successful in that partnership.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
How do you think various stakeholders, parents, community, staff, should be involved in our decision-making and in setting direction for our district?
So just to repeat, it's how should they be?
Sure. How do you think various stakeholders, parents, community, staff, should be involved in our decision-making and in setting direction for our district?
Absolutely. Okay. Well, so it's Southline Community Schools. So the schools belong to the community. So I think it's a natural that you're going to have the voice and the wishes of the community are going to be represented in the way that you're going to run your schools. In order to do that, I think about the strategic planning process, for example. Strategic planning, you need to have representatives of all these different groups that are able to bring ideas and bring thoughts, bring their wishes to the table when they're looking at developing a blueprint for what the school will look like in the future. Well, ultimately, the school board is the elected representative of the community. So having an opportunity for the community to be able to speak with school board members and to be able to help facilitate those conversations, I think that's a really important piece to the puzzle. But at the end of the day, when you're determining your direction, I think it should be something that honors the wishes, the past, and the future of your community. So anyway, I think parents in the community, students, everybody needs to have a voice at the table. And you need to pull those people together into a coherent plan, a plan that really represents what the community wishes for the school district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this is Randy Clark, and I do have the next 3 questions regarding political awareness. Equity and excellence are 2 themes that come up frequently in discussions about K-12 education. Do we need to make a choice between these issues, or can we do both? Could you explain?
Sure. No, of course you don't have to. Excellence. So I guess I'll just explain what my perspective on excellence is. Excellence is helping a student to reach their potential, and that's not the same for every student. It varies student to student. For example, I have 2 children, and my son Tyler is a traditional honor student. We don't have to help him at all. He's super highly motivated. He's into the traditional pathway when it comes to school. He'll go on. He's an honor student. My daughter has a very different set of skills. She's a decent student, but she's brilliant when it comes to art and creation. Those are 2 very different things. So when I talk about excellence, to me, it's individual. Every student, our goal as a school system is to help every student to reach their potential as a student. So for me, if you're committed to helping every student to do their best, to reach beyond their grasp, to reach their potential as a learner, to me, that brings equity to the table. So no, I think those 2 things are hand in hand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
In what specific ways do you envision working in a collaborative manner with other Oakland County school districts and the Oakland ISD to the best interests of South Lyon students, as well as the students throughout the county?
So collaboration is absolutely essential. Working together with other school districts is so valuable. I'm in Northwest Oakland County, so we have a group with Oxford, Clarkston, Holly, and Lake Orion, and we kind of have our own little crew up there, and we support one another, and we, sometimes we send each other jokes and things like that just to lift each other's spirits when we're going through a tough time. But we do a lot of collaboration, and during this COVID-19 situation, we all collaborated. We've been meeting weekly just to share how we're addressing varying problems. So I would envision that same thing if I were superintendent in South Lyon, working together with Novi and Brighton and Walled Lake and whatever other districts are like school districts. So I think that collaboration is important. Open schools can support in a lot of ways. But what I would say is at the end of the day, your superintendent needs to be committed first and foremost to the South Lyon School District. And that's where my heart would be. That's where my effort would be. And my responsibility would be to the students of the South Lyon School District first and foremost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So what impact do you believe has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
Okay. Nice, easy question, right?
Great.
Okay. I guess the first thing I would say, I think that testing and accountability, I think there's a role for it. I think that when we have good measures, I think it's really important for us to benchmark where we are as school systems. And I think it's important from the state side, they're allocating billions of dollars, that they're able to have some sort of measure that we're doing a good job, that we're following through, and we're educating the students the best that we can. Some of the challenges with standardized testing, and in Brandon, we've developed, I think you've done the same thing, but we've developed some of our own legislative priorities with the school board and our leadership team. And we have some different ideas as it relates to standardized testing. These are some of the concerns that I have. Take, for example, the M-STEP. The M-STEP, in a normal year, our students would take that in May. So they take a test at the end of the year, and they're in, let's say my daughter's in 4th grade right now, she'll take that test. We won't get those results back until August. And by the time anybody talks to my daughter, she's in 5th grade. So there's some value with those, with that test, but I think some of the better tests are some of the formative tests. I think those are the ones that have more meaning for teachers. The things that they're doing in the classroom, some of the unit tests that they're doing. I think some of the benchmark tests like the NWA, where you're able to take the test and get immediate feedback for students, and a teacher can immediately look and say, wow, Hannah, you've improved in this area, and it's immediate. That to me is standardized testing that's valuable. The former state superintendent, Brian Whiston, I had invited him out to Brandon. We spent a little bit of time walking around, and my position is that we should get rid of the M-STEP. I know that's controversial, but get rid of the M-STEP and replace it with something like the NWA that gives immediate feedback for teachers and students. And I just think that that's so much better. At the end of the day, standardized testing and all of our data is supposed to advise us on what we need to do to help our students be successful. We can't have a 4-month lag in getting results. Otherwise, it has no value. So those are some of the concerns that I have. And I know at the state level, they have, we're kind of between systems. We have a dashboard system, and then we have a grading system. To me, those don't really make an impact day to day on students. The formative data on the individual student, I think, is the richest and most valuable data that we have in any school system. So that's my thoughts on standardized data.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Pass it on to Mr. Dashner for finance.
Okay.
Let me get back to my question here. Okay, the first question I have for you is describe your experience with budget development and financial management, including making difficult budget cuts.
So I mentioned before that this is a area that I've had a lot of experience in, and I've worked really hard in this area. About 17 years ago, I went back to school, and I've always been really strong in teaching and learning. That's always been my bread and butter. I wanted to diversify myself. And I mentioned that I really focused in. I studied under Mike Adonisio, and I really focused in on finance and human resources with a lot of my specialist studies and in my doctoral studies. And it really put me in a position to have I think, a deeper understanding of some of the financial aspects of school districts and the state. With that said, experience in this, the superintendent role, I think, is enormously important when it comes to budget. I think a lot of superintendents wash their hands of the budget and they let the finance people do it. The finance people, you need to have a great finance person, but it's a team. Because at the end of the day, doing a budget is about making decisions. It's about making wise decisions that fit within the vision of where you want to go as a school district. So there's wisdom that goes with that. There's discipline that goes with that. There is a collaborative process that goes with that. There is homework and exploration of ripple effect of decisions that goes into that. So those are all things that I've had a lot of experience with. And as far as making tough decisions, I think probably any of your superintendents have probably had to make quite a few, but these are some of the big ones. In the past 6 years as superintendent, I had to close buildings, had to reorganize the district, had to outsource transportation. Unfortunately, that was absolutely painful. They had to reduce large FTE, right size our district staffing. We've made a lot of reductions, but what I would say about my philosophy on that is that it's not just about cutting, it's also about investing. So when we do our budgeting in Brandon, we have a list of things that are potential reductions if we need them. And then we have things that we need to invest in that fit within our vision for where we're going as a district. Things like preparing for teacher negotiations. That's something you have to plan for far ahead of time. Planning for some of the technology investments and things that you need to do. So those are just some of the philosophies that I have on that, but I have extensive experience in this. I do teach school finance at Oakland University and teach a lot of the aspiring leaders in the county about finance. And at the end of the day, I always tell them that, what are your dreams? They always talk about, everything they talk about is about curriculum. But I tell them, if you don't manage your money well, you're not going to be able to do those things. So I always say that knowing how to manage your money is the key to doing all the great and powerful things that you want to do in school. So that's a little bit.
Thank you. The next question is, what opportunities do you believe budget limitations present? And given the uncertainty of the funding for the 2021 school year, what would be your top 3 budgeting priorities?
So I think that one of the benefits of needing to, I think in any budget, whether it's your home budget, whether it's anything, I think it's always good to be frugal. And it's in my nature and things like that to be smart with your dollars. So I think when you're in tougher times, it really makes you think about what's important. What are the things that are really valuable? And there's a term that I learned a few years back. It's called academic return on investment. So what we do in our district, and where I would do anywhere I'm at, is we look at everything in the district and we look at what is bringing the greatest return for our students. And if it's low on that list, that's where we make those reductions. On the flip side of it, if it's bringing enormous benefit for our students, that's an area that we stay away from. So the opportunity is, it gives you a chance to reflect and look at where the greatest value is coming. As far as top 3 priorities, for me, top 3 priorities in everything would be, I would say number 1 would be finding out what those things that bring the greatest academic return to your students. Number 1 is you need to invest in those things that are the most important for the students in the South Lyon School District, number one. Two, I would say investing in opportunities, because that's what our schools are about. You know, there's fundamentals and everything like that, but a lot of the opportunities like the elective classes and the classes that help kids to find their passion in the future, the extracurricular activities, the sports, all those things, those are part of the richness of a student's school experience. So two, I would invest in opportunities. And then probably my third category would be investing in the future. I really believe strongly in planning when it comes to budget, is planning with the future in mind. How are the decisions that we're making today? How is it going to have a ripple effect on the South Lyon School District 5 years from now? And so to me, I really work hard to always be looking down the road. So I would invest in the future today. So greatest return on students, investing in opportunities would be two, and then investing in the future. Those would be my top three priorities.
Thank you. And then the last question I have for you, what ideas might you explore to obtain additional revenue for the district? Have you had success in procuring additional funds for your district? And if so, how?
Sure. So I guess I'll answer the second part of it first. I've had a lot of experience in trying to find other revenue streams for districts. And in Grosse Pointe, when I was an athletic director, I did all kinds of things with. We created a summer camp program that ultimately ended up bringing in about 6 figures a year into the athletic program. We did marketing. We put in one of those jumbotrons way back in like 2004, I think, and we were able to sell ads and put that back into our programs. Obviously, things like grants. We've done a ton with grants, foundation work. Could go on and on. This is something that I think we all do in all of our school districts, trying to find money for those extras. Where I would go back on the flip side of that is there's no amount of additional revenue that we're going to get that is going to be as important as the state funding that the school district receives. And to me, that's where you put your eggs. That's where a lot of effort needs to go, because if you look at districts like South Lyon and like Brandon, when you look at the total funding, it's significantly less than a lot of the other districts across the state. And for example, I think you're just under 10,000 per pupil in total pupil funding. Pontiac is over 20,000 per pupil. Bloomfield and Birmingham are over 16,000 per pupil. That has an absolutely profound impact on the experience in South Lyon versus some of these other school districts. To me, I think we have our work cut out for us, but I think that there needs to be considerable effort to address the base funding issues that exist in our current Proposal A system. To me, that is where I would probably say that is where the effort of the board and your administration needs to be put more than any other when it comes to funding for your district.
Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
next 3 questions come from me. They deal with instruction and curriculum specifically. The first one being, what experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap based on economic opportunities and other demographic factors?
Absolutely. So closing achievement gaps and is something I think all educational leaders have been involved with for quite some time. I have a little bit different take on it, and I'll get to that in just a second, but I'll give you some of the experience. I've had extensive experience in this. I've done many programs. I've done programs such as the Success Program at Brandon, which is kind of a dropout prevention program. I've had the Academic Lunch Program at Grosse Pointe South. I've had the 100 Club, all these different things. We have all done many, many things. There's many programs in order to help bring the most struggling students up to grade level. So I have all those experiences, and I'm happy to talk about any of the specifics on it. But my general philosophy on this, and my concern when we talk about achievement gaps oftentimes, is that some of the groups to me seem arbitrary. I already mentioned I have 2 kids, and my 2 kids are very different. They have the same parents, they're in the same household, They have, everything's the same, and they're very different, and they're in the same household. So I have a tough time clumping those two students together, and they're in the same household. So when we do these large groups, I get concerned about it. So to me, what I've always done in my career is focus on the individual success of every student in the school system. Every student reaching their personal best, every student reaching a little bit beyond their grasp, every student meeting their potential. And when you do that, all the other metrics all fall in place. But if you're committed to each and every student being as successful as possible, I think great things happen. And we don't have to talk about this group or this group or this group. We talk about this student. This is what this student needs to be successful. And that is what my focus has been on since I've been principal and obviously as superintendent. That is where my eggs have been. Then you have to have the complements of where to put students. When you find a student is struggling, when you find a student needs support, that's where all those other programs come in. Did you want to hear anything more about programs, or did that answer the question?
We have 56 more minutes left, so we're good on time. If you wanted to, I suppose briefly you could.
Sure. I'll just give you one example of a achievement closing or of a support program that I think has been really successful. In the Brandon School District, it started with data, looking at individual students and trying to find out what were some of the things that were getting them behind on credits, that were digging them into what I always call it quicksand. A student fails a class, let's say if they fail a 9th grade class, and next thing you know, they fail another class, and then they get into quicksand and they cannot get out. And so I work together with our mental health team, with our counselors, with groups of teachers, and we developed a program that initially we called it the Dropout Prevention Program. We don't really have very many dropouts at all. We're about the same numbers that you guys have in South Lyon. But the idea of dropout are kids that were not successful. And we end up calling it the Success Program. But basically what we do is it is monitoring quickly when students begin to fall, catching them early, having regular check-ins, having teachers collaborate around students that are struggling. It's about having programs in place where students can go. But this was probably the best thing about it is that we have individual plans made where the students have to have skin in game and come up with a plan for them to be able to help recover that credit. But that has been a really successful program. It's made a huge impact, and we've seen success growing tremendously with that program. But that's an example of a type of program that helps to close gaps for students.
Thank you. Next question. What do you believe are currently the biggest challenges with special education in our region, and how should those challenges be addressed?
So I would say the number one challenge is funding. I think it's no mystery that special education is underfunded in general. That is so that is something I know that the legislature has been talking about, and I know there's additional funding and things like that, but that's something that does need to be addressed because the needs are growing, and we need to have the funding in order to be able to achieve that. So that's one. Second one that I would probably throw out regarding special ed is that this is my concern, is that 10 to 20 years ago, a lot of students with higher needs attended center programs. And it's been great. We've done a lot of mainstreaming and bringing kids back into the buildings. But what I've been seeing across the region is that when we have more high need students in the classroom, what we're seeing is the special ed resources are being pulled away from students that are just a little bit below proficient and being pulled to address just the highest need students. And those high need students, they need that attention. But what I see oftentimes are the students that are maybe has dyslexia, or a student with a math disability, and they need just a little leg up to be just the same as everybody else. Those are the students that are not getting the support that they need. So that concerns me. And that's where that funding comes in, because when we're short-staffed, we're not able to meet the needs of all of those groups of students. So that's another area that's a concern. And then in general, I think that we're constantly seeking the best ways to connect students with disabilities with success. And I think it's really important that we keep expectations high, that we have a belief as a school system that all students can succeed and will succeed. And again, it might not be the same, might not look the same as everybody else, but we have to be just as committed to the success of a student with disability as anybody else. So the big ones are the funding and staffing, I would probably say are the top two needs as we look at it as a region.
Thank you. My final question for you, how would you meet the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career focused opportunities for our students?
So I think any successful school district has many options for students. And I think that there should be many pathways. And again, I mentioned that every child is different. Every student is different. So a school district, a responsibility of a school district is to have a variety of programs where students are able to explore their passions, but as they start to realize what those passions are, that they're able to pursue some of the skills that they need to have a career in those areas. So I think this happens, and it's happening in the Brandon School District. I'm sure it's happening right now in the South Lyon School District, but college readiness that's your baseline. That is something that everybody should be prepared and able to go to go to school. We need every student to be strong readers. We need every student to be strong in math. We need every student to be strong at writing. But it's more than that. It's about helping students to find out what their interests are, what their passions are. In the Brandon School District, we have done a lot with career readiness throughout our school district. We do a lot more of the exploration with the young kids, learning about what jobs are out there, what careers are out there. When we get to middle school, we take that to the next level and we start to have students actually explore more about what those jobs are and what some of those opportunities might be. And as we go into the high school, we've done a lot with career pathways to help students to figure out what is their interest, what do they want to do in their future, and then having programs for students to be able to explore what it is that they want to do in the future. One of the things that we've put in place actually last year is a program called Senior Capstone. And I'm excited about this, and it's one that I would like to have an 8th grade class to complement this as well. But the Senior Capstone classroom is a class that's supposed to launch our seniors into their future. And it includes not only resume writing and things like that, career exploration, but it also includes an externship opportunity where we have students out in the field actually shadowing people in the areas that they're passionate about. So how do you do it? By having a variety of programs for students. We have, in the Brandon School District, we've developed a STEM academy. We're actually K-12 STEM. We have STEM opportunities. We have a really neat STEM program at the high school that does some absolutely amazing things. And those students really are going on and getting big scholarships and going to Kettering and all these other universities. But next door to the STEM Academy is a lab that we're launching a welding program in the fall. And next to that, we relaunched a building trades program that is absolutely booming and flourishing. Even during COVID-19, they've been sending me videos of students building little wooden catapults and all these things. So having things for students to explore their passions, having good programs, and then having a vision that it's part of our responsibility to help connect kids, their education today with their futures. To me, that's what it's all about.
Thank you. Mr. Mate.
Hello there. I have 3 questions on leadership attributes. And I'll begin with, if you would please, describe for us the most difficult situation you've had to deal with in your educational career and tell us how it was resolved.
Well, after 24 years, I've had a couple of those. I've had a couple tough situations to deal with for sure. My number one has been recent. It's been the COVID-19. It's been the transition from traditional school to to a distance learning model in a matter of weeks. That was quite a challenge, and I would say that has been the biggest challenge, and I think it's been successful. But since I already talked about that one, let me think of a different one here. I would have to say the reorganization of the school district. In the 2017 school year, we reorganized the Brandon School District. Brandon is a community that is declining it's really the polar opposite of South Lyon. It is declining in overall population in the community pretty significantly. And that's one of the challenges for the Brandon School District. And as part of that, we had to make some tough decisions as it relates to reorganizing the district. But what I did on that is when I got hired in 2014 is I knew that this was inevitable, that at some point we were going to have to do that. So I began being really transparent with our families and talking not about if, but talking about when, and soliciting feedback and just having conversations about our current configuration and having those off the cuff. And then when we got to about 2016, we really started to study and we really included parents every step of the way in that process. Parents knew what the options were. They had surveys where they were able to give feedback on options A, B, C, and D. We really did our homework. We worked like crazy on that project. We had community sessions. We had all kinds of feedback. We'd listen to the community too. That's a really important one. Is one of our plans was to close one building, and the community came out overwhelmingly that they wanted a different building closed than that one. We listened to them and we made that adjustment. But that was a really challenging time. But by being transparent, by being very honest with people, by sharing all information, including some of the ugly stuff, by sharing that information with our parents, including things like building capacities and things, I think that we ended up building trust with our families by following through on what it is that we promised to them. So we saved significant amount of money by making those adjustments. And I would say that was the most difficult, and that's how we came out on the other side of it.
Thank you. All right,
Thank you.
next question. What are the key elements needed to establish and maintain a healthy and highly effective working relationship between you and our board?
So I love the board that I work for. I'm so excited to be here. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to be part of the South Lyon School District. I'm absolutely thrilled, but it pains me to be here knowing that my board is out in Brandon and we've done such good work together as a team. I've had a chance to work with, I think, 11 or 12 different board members, and I consider them all friends. And I'm going to tell you, after 6 years, they've had my back and I've had their back, and we've been a really good team. I think some of the foundations of our relationship has been built on proactive communication. If you were to talk to people that know me well, I'm a pretty aggressive communicator. I don't like anybody to be surprised by anything. I err on the side of candor when it comes to sharing information. And with the board, I never want the board to ever be surprised by anything. So sometimes I irritate them with, I have my phone and I give them an update, but I know they're going to get calls about this topic, and I want them to be prepared so they don't get blindsided. They do the same thing with me because they're out in the field and they're talking with parents and they give me updates. I trust their counsel immensely. Each board member that I work with now, they all have different skill sets and viewpoints. They have kids that are different ages. They have different things that are passion areas for them. And together we're a team. And I think I think, like I said, I think the transparency has been a really important thing, but I think it's about caring about one another. It's about understanding that the job of a school board member is very difficult. It's a voluntary job, and you're standing up there and you take these arrows, and I do my best to make sure as few arrows as possible ever get to the board. And I take that part of the job very seriously, because good board members are absolutely essential for a successful school district. If you have a contentious relationship and things like that, and you're not working harmoniously, it can be difficult. And good people don't want to stay on boards that aren't coherent. So so anyway, I take this job very seriously, and I work really hard. I give them a lot of information on the ground floor. So what I'll do is I do these updates on Fridays, and when there's some big decision that's coming up, let's say, for example, I mentioned that building reorganization. Well, I don't give the board the entire every single thing at one time. I try to do it in doses, and but maybe I share about building capacity one week, and I share some of the other concerns, so that each week that we're able to take our time and digest and really give each aspect of a decision the time that it needs to make the best decisions. So I work really hard to keep the board with the best information possible so that they're able to make the best decisions possible for the kids. So those are a few of the things that have worked really well for me in my 6 years.
Thank you very much. I have one more question. Given your research on our district, what do you believe our vision for the future should be? And how might you inspire and engage the entire district in pursuit of that vision?
So this right here, I don't think that anybody can come in, and I don't think anybody, whether you're internal or external, can come in and say, this is the vision of a school district, because a vision that's actually meaningful and is long-term and sustainable is something that is developed collaboratively. And there's things that I believe in, and I can talk about those in a moment, things that I'm really passionate about, but a vision needs to be done together. So for me, that is about whoever is hired, for this position needs to spend a considerable amount of time listening, learning, asking good questions, and really starting that process of learning what South Lyon is all about. From the outside, we know so many things, but listening to what people think and what they want, what their desires are, I think that is a place to start. So I think the vision has to come collectively or come collaboratively. But these are some of the things that are really important to me, as it relates to a vision. To me, I mentioned it before. To me, I believe passionately about the individual success of each student. It's finding out ways to help each and every student reach beyond their grasp. So for me, one of the things that I struggle with oftentimes is when I talked before about the achievement gap and some of the grouping of different people is that if we have a student that, let's say they're in the 10th percentile at the beginning of the school year, and they go to the 30th percentile by the end of the school year, we should be celebrating that student. Shouldn't be happy. We want to continue to grow in the future, but we should celebrate because that student has made enormous growth. The state's going to say they're not proficient, but they've made this enormous growth. We should be celebrating that. On the flip side of it, if we have a student, let's say they start the year in the 90th percentile and they end the year in the 80th percentile, the state says they're successful, but in a way that we have failed them. So to me, it's all about being committed to the success of every child every day, growing, helping each student to find their passion and to reach their potential as students. So those are the things that are the most important to me. Beyond that, I really value the well-rounded, rich experience for students. That they have a rich array of elective offerings at all the different levels where they're able to play and learn and explore their passions. I'm a passionate believer in the power of educational athletics. I'm a passionate believer in the power of performing arts. Every person in my family, we're all athletes, we're all musicians, we're all academics. And that, for me, that was an important part of my upbringing. And without that athletics and performing arts, I don't think it would have been as good of an education for me. So I believe very strongly in a well-rounded education for students. And then ultimately, the thing that ties us together is relationships. It is that small town thing. And I mentioned before that all towns are small towns, or they used to be small towns. And to me, the small town, looking out for one another, caring about everyone, knowing the names of our students, they're not just numbers, that they really matter. To me, that's something else that I would love to be part of a vision heading forward as a school district. And I know those are things that you probably believe as well, but those are some of my big areas of priority.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
And hi, I will be asking your final 3 questions tonight based on staff and personnel. First, please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team.
So I mentioned before that I was a baseball coach for about 11 years towards the beginning of my career, and I'm a big team guy. I work really hard to develop teams, and I've done that all throughout my career. And I've taken some of that stuff from early in my career, and I've continued heading forward. I don't know that there's anything better than people growing as individuals, but also growing collectively and working towards a common goal. That is something that's pretty special, and obviously that's something that I aspire towards wherever I'm at. As far as the most successful team, I've had so many great people that have worked on teams with me, but I would say that there is no team that has come together as strongly as my team in Brandon right now, my administrative team. And really proud of our team. And I think that what took place during this COVID-19 transition, part of the success of all of that was the trust that we built as a team, was the years of rolling up our sleeves and going to work, was the communication that we had with one another, was the collaboration that we had. The team we have right now is really a strong team. When I came to the district in 2014, we started. I do like a book study every year. I like teams to always learn together. I think when you learn together, you grow together. But the first book that we talked about was Stephen M.R. Covey's The Speed of Trust. To me, trust is the foundation of everything. And we started with trust, and we started about trusting relationships. And there's 4 big pillars when it comes to trust. One is about integrity. That's your courage and your humility and those type of things. The second is about motives and agenda. The next is about capabilities. And the fourth one is about delivering results. And as our team, I think that we've led with integrity. I think that we've been really open with one another. We've not been, we don't have hidden agendas. We all continue to work on our skills collectively as a group. We plug gaps for each other. Each person has different skill sets. And then ultimately, I think we're delivering results for the students in Brandon. And so I would say this is the best team that I've ever worked with.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, how would the president of your union describe you?
So in my 6 years as superintendent, I've had 2 union presidents, and I would say my relationship is very similar with both. It's a very strong relationship, and if we move forward, I would encourage you to give him a call. He's one of my references. But we have a relationship that is built on mutual trust and mutual respect. I work really hard to communicate with him. I don't ever want him to be surprised, and he does the exact same thing with me. He communicates with me, and before that, Andrea, who was there before, she did the same thing. We always look out for one another. We communicate well with one another. I try really hard to make sure that I give them get them in on the ground floor on important decisions like this COVID-19 thing. I shared with our union leadership the information very early so that they were able to let me know if they saw any union issues coming up. We don't always agree on things, and that's okay because we respect one another. I think John respects me as a leader. I respect him greatly as a leader. And I think that it has really set us up to have very strong relationships between our administration and our teaching staff at the district. And it's built on transparency, it's built on trust, it's built on respect, and it's built on a mutual commitment that we have for the students in the Brandon School District. So I think it's a very strong relationship. It's a very productive relationship as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And then finally, what would you suggest in terms of a comprehensive professional development plan for our educators? Specifically, what would be the key priority area as well as the delivery system?
So as far as key priority, that should really, I think that should come from your strategic plan. In your strategic plan, whatever the metrics are that you're using to measure your success, the pathway to that success, that really should be something that your PD is aligned to. For example, in the Brandon School District, we've talked a lot about the concept of what I call the productive struggle. I didn't invent that term, but it's something that I got through research. Productive struggle is having students reach a little bit beyond their grasp, but not getting to destructive struggle where it's too difficult, finding that balance between hard enough and too easy for a student. And sounds easy, that sounds like an easy thing, but that is a great challenge. That's one of our priorities that we have as a district. Therefore, we have to talk about it during our professional development. So where do you get those key priorities? It should come from your strategic plan. It should come from the data that you have as a school system, the data that you get from the students. What are the gaps in learning? What are the gaps between schools? What are the skill sets that teachers need? On that, that's a really important one. So one of the things I talk about a lot with our students is making sure that their learning is relevant to them, that we can connect what they're doing in Algebra 1 class with where they are today and where they're headed in the future. Well, it's no different for any of us. If I want to figure out what I want to do for professional development, I want to have a say in it. I would like it to be as relevant as possible for me. So there is a time for large group professional developments on key topics, but I think whenever possible, when you get the voice of teachers and teachers have a say in what their professional development is, and that you're open to it being different. Different teachers need different skill sets. For example, we've made this transition to this distance learning. Well, there are teachers, particularly some of our young teachers, that this was a snap. They know technology. This is what they do. And it took them about 5 minutes to be ready for distance learning. And there's other folks that it took a significant more amount of time to get them prepared. So individualizing for the needs of teachers, I think is a really important piece. So the methodology that I really like to do, just a general framework, is using data, getting feedback from staff, having some sort of group that is able to advise. In Brandon, we have a curriculum council that goes through that data and really looks for spots that are gaps for large groups of our staff. Then after that, when you're implementing it, I think a lot of times it's good to do something all together as a staff, but then I like to break out into smaller groups, maybe where it's a department that's looking at an issue such as grading. And then when I was a high school principal in particular, I always had the end of my professional development, I always had time for the individual teacher to practice whatever it is that we were working on. So if it was something dealing with technology, for example, we might have a presentation at the beginning for everybody. We might have some of our technology experts walk them through whatever it is that we want them to learn. And then it might be something like we have 5 different locations, and maybe it's the advanced through the beginner groups where people can break out and ask questions based on where their levels are, for example. And then giving them time to go back to their classroom or here virtually to be able to experiment and play around and figure things out on their own. I think that's an important part of it too. So those are some of my strategies when it comes to PD. But again, it should be aligned with the gaps that you have in the district, which are probably going to be in your strategic plan.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We would like to take a few minutes now to provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions you might have for the board.
Sure. I guess I'll throw this out there. This will be a question. If you look at the last 3 to 5 years in the South Lyon School District, for you as a board member, what is the one thing that you are the most proud of for the South Lyon School District over the last 3 to 5 years? Sorry, should have asked an easier one, right?
Right out of the gate.
A long list, right?
Yes, yes, it is.
I can go ahead and start if you don't mind. I think that we take pride locally in the fact that though we are at the base foundation level for funding, we long ago, through a long time superintendent we had the ability developed over years to do the best we could with the little that we have.
I guess for me, I will speak to my personal experience. In the last 3 to 5 years, I've had 2 of my 4 children enter into our school district. They've been at 3 different elementary schools during that time period. And it is amazing to me the consistency of excellence that we have seen as our students have gone from one building and one set of leadership and teachers to another. I've been very impressed and proud of that.
Fantastic.
I can't say for me it's one specific thing that I'm proud of. Every year at our graduation ceremony, I'm very proud to see what our students do, how they perform, and how they conduct themselves. One of our students from a few years ago graduated, went to the Air Force Academy, and was the mistress of ceremonies at her own graduation and got to introduce Mike Pence. That made me proud to hear that she went that far on a scholarship and did so well to be able to do that. That makes me and my colleagues proud as a group.
Fantastic.
Something that hits me, and I really didn't see it as much until I was a board member, and I've been on for just over a year now, was just the level of caring of different people in the district. And that goes all the way from the central office staff to a lot of the different teachers, and especially the administrators. That was the part that I didn't see before, is the concern they have for students. It's a side you don't necessarily see.
It's great. Fantastic.
If I may, I would add, I agree with Mr. Schwegler in the sense that we have terrific staff from one end of the building, one end of the district to the other. They're really great people. They care about kids. But I would say, in a more global sense, I'm really proud of the way that the people in our community, especially considering we're a collection of communities underneath this umbrella of SLCS, the way they are engaged in their schools and the way they turn out for them. And we were able to pass a bond and build an elementary school that we really needed because we were growing like gangbusters. We're all nervous about the upcoming bond because of the COVID situation, but I believe people will turn out again because they believe that strongly in their schools and they're and they're involved. And I think that's a really good thing for the community, for the district.
Fantastic.
I think one thing that that I'm proud of that I've seen over the last 3 to 5 years is a very concerted effort in the schools to make a community of the school, make that part of the culture of the school. The principals, I have direct relation to one of the middle schools, one of the high schools, but just seeing how they're finding creative ideas of how to bring the kids together. One of the middle schools is they're purchasing an international flag for every different nationality that's in that school. And I thought, oh, okay, I might see 4 or 5, but there's about 30 or 40 different nationality flags in the cafeteria of that school, just to show that you have individuals but yet as a school collection, this is what we are and who we are. So that's one thing that I love and appreciate and am proud of about our schools.
Fantastic.
And I guess I'll just finish off, because of all the things that the other board members said, I'm proud that people continue to move to South Lyon. And one of the main reasons they do that is for our school system. And it's been consistent, and the community sees that, and people outside of our community see that. And I'm very proud of that.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate it so much. I know this is, it's awkward doing an interview. I'm just staring at my computer in a silent house, and it is, it's hard to make those connections that, that I think we all thrive on that. That's why we're in this people business. So I do appreciate the opportunity to be here so much. When I first became superintendent in 2014, I think it was right at the end of Bill Pearson's tenure. But I've met Bill a few times, and is really a neat guy. And I can tell you that him spending 20 years here, that's what I want. If hired, this is a long term. This is the pinnacle for me. I would love to have a chance to be part of the next generation here in the South Lyon School District, and invest myself fully in this community to be part of its present and part of its future. And I just want to tell you that I'm so impressed by everything that you all are doing. I can tell you that all my connections and people in South Lyon just speak the world, and they have such pride for the South Lyon School District. Just want to say you're doing a great job, and just want to say thank you so much for having me here, and hope to have a chance to meet again soon.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Outlaw. We appreciate your interest in the
Thank you.
superintendent position for South Lyon Community Schools. The board is interviewing 6 candidates, and we plan to conduct our second interviews next week, and we will let you know Thursday night where you stand in our search process.
Fantastic.
Thank you for coming, and we enjoyed meeting with you.
Absolutely. Thank you again, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Good night.
bye now.
Thank you. Good night.
So at this point, I would like to let Mr. Silveri, who I think is on, oh, yep, he's there. He's going to lead us in a quick discussion on what is going to happen tomorrow night.
So congratulations on reaching this point in the process. It's been a grueling week, but to your credit, you've decided to come back together on another night, on a 4th night this week, to give yourselves time to process your thoughts and to really be able to make a well thought out and a sound decision. So I'm going to warn you though, before I jump into kind of where we go from here. I'm in a different location. Just before the first interview started, the power in the area went out. So I had to scramble a bit. About midway through the first interview, it came back. I was very happy until just after the second interview started, when it went out again. And by now I was in a pitch black office, basement office. So I went towards the light, which is why you see me in a different location. Right now the power's on, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed it'll stick for a few more minutes. So you've had the chance now to hear from all 6 of the candidates you selected to interview. And that is obviously a really critical part of your decision-making, but I want to stress with you, it's not the be all and end all. And so speaking in generalities, this has no bearing on any of the candidates you spoke with, but in these interviews, you can have a candidate in an interview situation just blow you away, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the right person for the job. And you can have somebody perhaps underwhelm, and it also doesn't mean that they are not the right person for the job. So I don't want to dismiss it. By all means, it's a very important part of this process. This is the person who'll be the face of your organization, and how they present themselves in an interview situation is very important. But you have a lot of data to consider, and you bought yourself some time to be able to do so. So I want to encourage you, first and foremost, have that candidate profile that we developed collaboratively with stakeholder input right in front of you, and remember that that's the ideal and that's what we're shooting for, right? So I want to encourage you to go back and review the AppleTrack applications that each candidate submitted very thoroughly, their cover letters, their resumes, any additional information that those candidates may have provided to you as well. And I think each candidate provided you with some additional information. The feedback that you've received, both in writing and even if you've received it verbally from your stakeholders, how they've responded to hearing the candidates interview with you as well. All of that is really critical, and it's important that you make as objective a decision as you can in terms of, at this point, of those 6 candidates, who are the 2 that you think potentially could be that right person for South Lyon. So the goal for tomorrow is going to be to hopefully narrow the field from the current 6 down to 2 final candidates who will remain in contention for the position. What I'm going to ask of each of you is to come prepared to share with everyone who, going into the meeting, you feel your top 2 candidates are, and to at least briefly speak to why that is. Because before, we want to always keep this dialogue in a kind of in a positive realm. So we're not going to speak in negative terms about why maybe we didn't select others, or even if we might disagree with one of our colleagues is sharing, we're not going to do so in a negative way. But you'll have the opportunity to say, here are the 2 folks that I feel give us our best chance for success going forward. So I want to encourage you, though, too, to be listening very carefully to the perspective of your colleagues as each one of you shares your thinking. It may be that a colleague shares some thoughts that could potentially sway you. And what we'll do when everyone's had the chance to speak to that is we'll go through a very similar process that we did when we had a field of 20 applicants and you selected 6 to interview, where we'll see where the consensus may be. We'll have a little bit of further dialogue. And I think typically, once you go through a process like that, those 2 candidates that majority of the board favors, or perhaps all of the board, will kind of emerge, and it'll be apparent who should be included in a motion that you'll adopt to invite those 2 people back for 2nd round interviews. So having said all of that, what questions might you have about that? All right.
Okay.
I don't have
Great.
anything.
All right. Makes it easy.
The process is easy. The decision is difficult.
That's very well said, Craig. That's very well said.
Okay. With that, we can move on to our next item, which is public comment. I do not have any public comments. So I think we can move to adjourn.
So moved by Dashner.
Support by Clark.
Moved by Mr. Dashner, supported by Mr. Clark to adjourn. Mr. Abate, please call the roll.
Sure. Mrs. Zertel,
Yes.
Mr. Schwegler,
Yes.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
I vote yes. Mr. Dashner,
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy,
Yes.
and Ms. Anshaw.
Yes. Motion passes 7-0. We are now adjourned.
More cake.